China Development Forum is underway. Apple CEO Tim Cook, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, and Bridgewater Associates founder Ray Dalio are some of the high-profile names attending the annual event. Joining us now, Daniel Rosen, Rhodium Group founding partner. And any easier to thread the needle for these guys at this point? Do you think, Daniel, they got to be there, but man, we're right in the middle of the ultimate frenemy debate for China. We need them, but we certainly need to keep an eye on what's happening.
Yeah. The difference between today and a couple years ago, as these kind of forums have been taking place, is that China, virtually 2 years now, has not really grown. 2022, terrible growth year. Last year, they say it was pretty good in the official numbers, but everywhere you look, you can't see anything really growing. And so a China that doesn't have a lot of growth to put on the table is not going to have the same conversation with leaders, whether it's CEOs or with other heads of state and treasury secretaries and other officials around the world.
Do you think with some of the people that we mentioned that are so all in with China, you think they're disappointed in the pivot that President Xi made a couple of years ago?
Well, first of all, I don't think anybody's all in. It hasn't been for a while. Folks have been quietly hedging back in a prudent way for a good long while now. And so everybody's got their eyes wide open. Are they disappointed? Of course, they're continuing to be very disappointed, as are Chinese business leaders, Chinese economists, Western economists. We're all pretty disappointed, and we're puzzled, moreover. China has opportunities to address the elephant in the room, which is that the world is crying out for demand stimulus policies to manage the anemic conditions in consumption, and all they're being offered back is supply stimulus, which is causing overcapacity problems and hence additional trade conflict to come in the very near future.
You don't think Ray Dalio is all in? I mean, we've had him on, and I heard all about how we need to have a reboot on our version of capitalism because it causes so much inequality. And we couldn't get him to say the slightest negative word about Uyghurs or what goes on in China. It was staggering. It was staggering to watch.
You're picking the extreme end of the spectrum there, which is fine.
That's what we said in the intro. We said Ray Dalio, right? I think.
Well, and Tim Cook and some other guys as well, right? So I mean, even Ray, even if you look at the extreme ends of the curve, and there you've got a few other folks as well, they have moved quite a bit to the more skeptical end of the spectrum, and they're sort of, instead of just saying everything's going to be great, there's no problem here, instead they're kind of searching for explanations and reasons why we shouldn't be more pessimistic about the outlook. And it's just harder and harder to find those lines of reasoning.
Well, we keep going back and forth. We do something, and then, then when China retaliates and does something, and a lot of it seems like it's almost symbolic, but it doesn't seem like it's helping China's growth prospects, or at least it could put a little bit of a damper on what the future looks like. I don't know why GDP would get any better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about domestic demand in China is the number one big thing that's missing from the growth equation. But the number two, also pretty non-trivial, is China's ability to maintain the world's largest ever trade surplus for its own growth, for its own prospects, for income growth, for all the people in China that have to consume stuff tomorrow. Exports is pretty important. And when all the signals internationally, and not just with Washington, but very much with Brussels now, and even Berlin, which is sort of the European equivalent of your Ray Dalio observation there, there's a different conversation taking place, and it all points to a kind of less permissive attitude toward Chinese export spillovers, which just they should not be expecting the world to just be tolerating additional growth in a trade surplus to grow out of their problem.
So Schwartzman doesn't count. How about Nike? How about the NBA? I mean, I can go on and on and on for people that are all in. If you
look,
want.
By Rhodium's count, U.S. firms, if you market to market, built up about $600-700 billion of asset position in China that generated a lot of income flow for decades and decades. And even if you've got very, very dark outlook, you don't say that on network television before you have a chance to try to figure out what you're going to do with those assets.
There's plenty of guys still all in.
But I mean, relative to where they were even a year ago, I mean, at the beginning of 2023, these guys were all saying, just like, hang in there. Once COVID subsides, we're going to see the China we knew come back. Right. And the story of the year was that by the end of 2023, nobody was really telling that story anymore.
And I'm really not disparaging them. It's the world is gray. The world is gray. I mean, we deal with all kinds of countries that we don't agree with on certain things, so I understand.